Today's gonna hopefully be a little more just practical show and tell stuff. Last week was a little bit of scare you. This week is what to do with it. But let me pray for us, and then we can get started. Lord, I thank you so much for letting us be here together, and I pray that you would use this time to equip us to disciple our children in a way that honors you. And I pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment when it comes to technology. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Alrighty, so just a couple of reminders. Last week I talked about how our goal is to send our children out with discernment in an inescapably digital age. So we have to remember that our kids are going to be sent out into this age. We cannot avoid the fact that they are going to live in a digital age. And so what our responsibility is to disciple them in a way that develops them with the discernment and the competency they need to be able to navigate that digital age with discernment. So that is what we talked about last week. This week, I want to give you a little bit of how-to on that. And we're going to talk a lot about internet filtering, device monitoring, that sort of thing. But I want to just start out by recognizing that filters and parental controls are not the answer. Discipleship is the answer. The ultimate answer to your children honoring God with technology is that you are taking the time to disciple them every single day. And that goes back to the things that Pastor Kevin taught on and that we taught on in the first week we were here. Talk to your children about the Lord. There's a old dead guy named Thomas Chalmers who wrote a thing called The Expulsive Power of a New Affection. And what he talks about is that whenever we are seeking to rid ourselves of sin or of temptation or of worldly things, the most powerful thing that we have is to push out those things with a deep affection for the things of the Lord and a love for the Lord. If we don't have that love for the Lord that is pushing out the worldliness, then it's going to be impossible for us to teach our children how to fight against the worldliness of a digital age. But if we are training in them a love for the Lord, that love for the Lord teaches them and gives them at a heart level what they need to handle technology well. So we need to address their hearts, because if their heart is wrong, if their heart is not directed towards the Lord, then the filters and the parental controls and all of that are going to have a limited effect. Now, that being said, filters and parental controls can and should be part of the solution. And so we're going to talk about that some today, because if your kid's addicted to a drug, and they've gotten addicted to some terrible drug, you want to speak to their heart, right? You want to speak to what it is in their heart that led them to that addiction, but you're also going to put up boundaries that are going to keep them from getting that drug as easily, right? So we want to speak both to their heart in discipleship, and we want to figure out what are healthy boundaries and healthy times and places for us to put up those boundaries. So a few resources that I've consulted and that you should be aware of. Number one, I mentioned last week, is access.org, their parent resources. And I actually want to show you on my phone here. This is access.org. And if you go to it and you click the three lines up in the top right, you can go to the Read tab here. The Culture Translator is a weekly email you can sign up for. It's fascinating. Every week they send you information about what younger generations are thinking and doing, and a lot of the time it has to do with technology. So that's just something you can subscribe to and get this thing every week. But I really want to point you to the parent guides. If you go to the parent guides, you can scroll, and they've got just parent guides to all of these different difficult topics. And it just goes and goes and it goes. There's tons of stuff here. And what the parent guide does is it gives you kind of conversation starters. It gives you information to be able to work off of and talk through. So those, I think, are really, really helpful because, I mean, you can see they're talking about teens and alcohol. They're talking about conspiracy theories and eating disorders. Like, these are not easy topics. And even if you don't go like straight word for word off of this parent guide, it at least gives you a starting point, and it gives you something to work off of as you talk to your kids about difficult things. So those are helpful. Particular ones that I would point you to there's one on smartphones, there's one on internet filtering and monitoring, social media, and then they do specific social media things too. They'll give you like the latest on Instagram or a parent guide to Snapchat or that sort of thing. So if your kid wants one of those social media things, I would go to one of those. There's an article on the Gospel Coalition called How to Make the Most of the Parental Settings on Your Child's Phone. I'm kind of building what I'm going to talk about today off of the outline of his article there. So if you just Google that, it'll pop up. That is written, I think, by Andrew Noble, and he's got all sorts of stuff. So he's also got another article called Parenting a Teen. Here are some tech resources. And it's just an expansive article with lots of stuff. If you're a teen parent, you should just Google that and it'll pop up. And then there's a website called Protect Young Eyes. I'm going to reference that a few times this session. And they're doing a lot of stuff, particularly towards protecting from young people from pornography addiction and that sort of thing. So those are a few resources, but I want to talk through a few different kind of boundary levels that we can have that you can work through over time as parents. And then I want to talk specifically about some apps and show you some things about different apps that you need to know about. And then I'll talk a little bit about some tricks that your kids might use to be smarter than you. But the approach that I am arguing that you should use is a graded approach. It's something that is different for every family and for every kid. The kind of timeline on this is going to be a little bit different. But what I'm arguing here is that you should not go just completely open and let your kids have access to everything. You also can't just close it off and keep them from touching it until they're 18. So finding a way to introduce in a healthy way at healthy times, there's different levels of boundaries we're going to put up. So boundary level 0 is basically they don't have access to things. So you could give them a dumb phone, a flip phone that they can't really get to much on. I talked last week about how you can get a cellular smartwatch that you can do text message and call and all that stuff with your smartwatch, and it's not going to be as much of a temptation for them for a lot of other stuff. Or you can just give them no phone. So some of you have really little kids, they don't need a phone, and that's boundary level 0. You have very little to worry about there. But boundary level 1 is access to a single app. And I do want to show you this, particularly for younger parents with younger kids here. Your kids can get to things on your device that you don't realize that they can get to. And they somehow just get off of what you gave to them on your device and find their way to things that they shouldn't be looking at. So both Apple and Android have things that can help us address this that will limit them to their use of one particular app. So Apple's is guided access and Android is app pinning. I've got an iPhone, so all the things I show you today are Apple, but a lot of Android stuff is just basically the same sort of thing on an Android phone. So I want to show you how to do guided access. If you go to your settings if you have an Apple phone, you go all the way down to accessibility. So it's this little man and it's a blue thing. You go to accessibility and go way, way down on accessibility to guided access. It has a lock there. And you can go into guided access and you can turn it on. You can set a passcode. And the accessibility shortcut for it is if you hit your lock button 3 times, it locks your phone into whatever app you are using, and that you can't get out of it without a password. So if I am on Safari, looking at parent guides here, and I give my kids Safari, which I would not give them Safari, give them something else. But for example's sake, I'm going to click the lock button on my screen 3 times, and it's going to give me a chance to go to guided access. And now you can see, hopefully this doesn't unplug, I can't like swipe up to get out of the app. I can't pull down my my stuff to my utilities or anything like that. I can do nothing except for use Safari. And so whatever app you are in, it locks it into that. That's important for your kids. If you want to hand your kid a game or hand your kid a video to watch or something like that, put on guided access so they're not going to swipe out of that and go and buy things on Amazon whenever you don't know it. So to get out of it, you click that side button 3 times again, and it'll have a passcode, which I have as 1234. Don't use that. They will figure it out, and then you can go to end. You can also do options like where you circle a part of the screen and it blocks off a certain part of the screen so they can't touch that part of the screen. I've never tried that. I don't know in what circumstance you would use that, but it's cool. So that's guided access. That is limited access to a single app. So that's important for younger kids. But at some point, we may give our children an actual device. And so the boundary level 2 is limited access to some apps with parental monitoring. This is turning, it's okay. Don't fall. All right, I think we're good. So what you need to know is as soon as you get to boundary level 2, there is a level of trust that is there. As soon as you give them limited access to some apps, they have some freedom that you are not going to know what they're doing. And there has to be some level of trust on your part. Filtering and monitoring can't catch everything. You can't, if you went home last week and you found that your kid has a pornography problem, you can't just fix their problem by putting filters on their phone, because there's ways around these filters. There's trust that you have to have on this. There is limited, and I'll talk a little bit later, filtering is particularly limited within apps. So you can filter pretty well on a phone what's coming in messages or who they're calling or that sort of thing. But if you get into Snapchat, often whatever you're using to filter has a really hard time catching what's actually happening in Snapchat. So a lot of the filters have a hard time with different apps. So, and teens are tech savvy. They are able to find ways around the filtering that you're using. So just know that as soon as you get to this, there is a level of trust that you have to have in your kid. A few things that you can do in boundary level 2. Number 1 is you must limit device locations in your home. Where is your child allowed to use a device? There's a quote from that Protect Young Eyes website that says, where kids use tech often dictates how they use tech. If your child has free access to their devices in their room with the door closed, they're going to use it differently than if they can only use it in the family room. If they are allowed to go into the bathroom with their phone, they're going to do a lot more things in the bathroom than they would in the living room. And I would just say, for me personally, bedrooms and bathrooms are off limits for technology. Now, my kid is 4, but even whenever he gets older, it's going to be a highly limited thing where there is public area use. Now, you can do, I have to be in the room, or you have to be in this particular room, or whatever. That varies from family to family, but know that if they have private use of their device, they are going to use it differently than if they must use it in a particular area. So, and also I would say with locations, times, and we'll talk about how you can limit times. There is no reason that your teenage son should have a phone after 10 p.m. Zero reason. Don't let it happen. It's not smart, not wise. So limit device locations and times. Now, an option, particularly for people who are starting to introduce technology to their kids, is to use parental control phones. So there's different companies that use parental control phones. Bark and Gab Wireless are probably the most popular ones. I've heard the most good stuff from Bark. But what this is basically, is particularly with Bark, it's a Samsung smartphone that looks like all of their friends' smartphones. It is a legitimate smartphone, which they make a big deal of, because if your kid comes with some kiddie phone and all their friends have iPhones, then that's a shame thing for them. And so it's important that they are able to have something that actually looks like a legitimate thing. So the Bark phone, it's just a Samsung phone that has I'll talk about Bark and their software and that sort of thing, but it has all of Bark's accountability and filtering and monitoring things built into the phone. So these are literally phones that are made to be monitored. You're able to cut down a lot on the ways around monitoring and the ways around filtering, because these phones are actually made to do it. So I would recommend this for parents who are introducing a smartphone into their child's life. If you want to learn more about that, protectyoungeyes.com has an article called Best Phones for Kids, the Ultimate Guide. And it compares all of these different phones, and it's really helpful. Looking at that, I would probably do a Bark phone, but that's up to you. There's strengths and weaknesses to different things. Outside of that, so Bark and Gab Wireless, that's like you would do a subscription to it basically, and they're on like T-Mobile or Verizon or AT&T. They're using that, but you're paying the subscription and they're giving you the phone. No contract, but you have to pay the subscription to keep the phone, kind of thing. It's a lot like a cell phone contract, but it's with a Bark phone. And you can, with that Bark phone, you can monitor what websites they're going to. You can see what's coming in and out of their messages. It'll alert you. They've gotten really smart now. It'll alert you if your kid receives a message with alarming content, not just like some terrible photo, but if someone sends your kid a message like you're worthless or something like that, you'll get a notification on your phone and you'll know, hey, there's something going on my kid's phone that I need to have a conversation with them about, which is really important, because I talked about multiple times last week, we have to have conversations with our kids. And so these turn into conversation starter tools, because it notifies you and gives you enough information that you're able to have a conversation with your kid and help them navigate. When someone tells you you're worthless, how do we respond to that? And what did that make you feel? And you can have those discipleship conversations based on those phones. Now, if you're not going to get a parental control phone, there are a lot of options with just regular phones. And the parental control phone, again, it does cost money. I think it's money well spent. But there are built-in parental controls on most phones. So iPhones and Androids have different controls. Apple Family Sharing and Android Family Link are the two main ones that you're going to run into. And I want to show you a little bit with Apple Family Sharing. Again, this is the same sort of thing as with an Android. But note that if your kid has an Apple, if your kid has iPhone, you need iPhone. You are not going to be able to effectively monitor their iPhone if you are not also on Apple. Good job, Apple. You got us. So what you want to do if you're setting up parental controls for a child is you're going into settings. What you do not want to do with Apple in particular is you do not want to give them a phone under your Apple ID. So I do not want to hand James a device that has Will Morris as the Apple ID on it. And the reason for that is if they can figure out your 4-digit passcode, which they can, then they have access to everything. They can change everything. They can get rid of any filtering, any monitoring, all of that. So what they've done is they've made this family option, which, just so you know, my 4-year-old does not have a cell phone. I did this entirely for your benefit, but I made James a Apple ID. So this is not a full-on Apple ID. This is a child Apple ID. So what you can do is if you go into that family tab, if you see up here in the top right corner, there's a blue plus person. You click there, and it pops up a load bar, and you can invite. I have no idea why Kaya Jax is who it wants to invite, but you can either invite suggested people, or you can invite others, or you can create a child account. So if you create a child account, that puts this ID underneath your Apple ID. So you then have parental authority over that Apple ID. And they can have, so I have an iPad at home that is now James's iPad, and he's on this. You create the child's account, you put in birthday and all that stuff, and I'm not going to walk through all of that. But what the result is I can go into James's account here, and I can control all of James's screen time. I can control what he's able to do, if he can make his own subscriptions, if he can purchase things, if he can look at locations. I can do all of that stuff and control it from my device, and he can't do anything about that. He can't change it. He can't get to it unless he gets to my phone and does that. So that is how you would set up Apple family sharing, and you can do that across all of your devices. Now, there's some problems. Well, no, let me not get to problems just yet. How I would suggest doing this, if I go into James and I go into screen time, screen time is where you would do most of your restrictions here. So you can change what web content he's able to go to. You can change what kind of apps they can download. You can change to where they can't download apps unless you say yes, they can download apps, which I highly suggest, and I'll get to that a little bit more. There's time limits that you can do. What time of day are they able to use? All of those things are available on this. Now, and also, very important, you can keep them from deleting apps, because if they can delete an app, they can delete your restrictions on the app. And then they can get the app back with 0 restrictions, and they have circumvented your time limits, and they have circumvented everything. So we can look at some of that maybe in a little bit if we have time. But what I would say is if you are setting up restrictions on a device like this or in Android Family Link, take away everything first. Start with them not being able to get to the home screen on their phone. Like get to where they can do absolutely nothing on their phone, and then add openings for things that they are able to use. The reason that I say that is if you start with they have access to everything, and then you try to put Band-Aids on, like they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this, you'll always be adding more Band-Aids, and you're never going to catch everything that you want them to not be able to do. If you start with, I can't use this phone is completely worthless to me right now, and then you open up and you say, okay, but you can use the phone app, and you can use messages for these particular contacts, and you can use, then you know all of the things that you have allowed. And all of the things that you haven't allowed are still locked down. So that's going to give you a much more secure kind of position on their phone. Now, I'm not saying if your kid is a teenager who has a phone with no restrictions right now, take it from them and cut it off. Like, that's probably not how you need to do it. But if you are finding ways to restrict them, it's going to be better to start with more restriction and then open up those restrictions later where you are able to open them up. Now, there's a few new features on Apple in particular that are really helpful that you should know about. One is sensitive content warning, and this is not just for your kids, this is for you too. It can be really helpful. So if you go in your settings down to privacy and security, this guy right here, and you go down all the way to the bottom, there's a sensitive content warning thing here. What this does is it is automatically detecting nude photos and videos before they're viewed on your iPhone, and it blurs them automatically. So if you're scrolling through Safari or something and there's an ad that has sensitive content, it'll blur it for you. And they've made this is particularly right now it's best on FaceTime messages and in these things, but they're also putting this technology in third-party apps as well, and they're allowing it to be able to be used in that. It's really important for AirDrop because the depravity of the world is most evident in the existence of AirDrop with teenagers. The lunchroom now is the air is full of pictures being airdropped one to another in the lunchroom. If you have an iPhone and you're in the lunchroom and other people have iPhones, they might not even know you. They just pull it up and they're like, oh, I'm going to send that person a picture. You could be at a restaurant somewhere and some person thinks, oh, I want to send that guy a picture. If you don't have your airdrop set to contacts only, they can send you a picture and that picture will just pop up on your phone while you're sitting there looking at it. So someone could send your child a naked photo through AirDrop and it just pops up and there it is. They've seen it. So positive, number one, their AirDrop should be contacts only. That's important. But also it'll pop up and with sensitive content warnings, it'll be blurred. They won't see it and it'll filter that out. That's something you can do for your phone too. I turned it on for my phone just so that it's going to naturally blur it. In addition to the sensitive content warning for your kid's phone, there is, and I always have a hard time getting to this one, it's in screen time, communication safety. This one is similar to a sensitive content warning, but what it does with your kids is if you turn this on their phone, if sensitive content comes to your child's device, it'll pop up a screen and it'll say, hey, this is sensitive content. Are you sure you're wanting to look at that? And if they say, yes, I want to look at that, it pops up another screen. It's like, time out. You could message an adult. Like, you could send this message to your dad right now and tell them what's happening. Are you sure you want to do that? And it pops up these multiple warnings. Now, the thing about it is right now, they can still hit the button multiple times and it lets them get to the content. But it is a nice thing that it's giving your child multiple action steps that they have to get to that content. So that's just another added thing for that. But again, there's trust there. That's not a complete barrier that's going to keep your kid away from that stuff. Now, there was one article that said communication safety will send you a notification if that happens. I cannot find anywhere on Apple where it says that it does that. I don't think it does that. And for obvious reasons, I did not test this out or try to make that happen. So that is something that I don't know if you get a notification for that. But that is something that someone said might happen. I don't know. So beyond that, that is on those on those built-in parental controls, you can lock down a lot. Again, you can add time limits. You can do app limits. You can say they can't use this app. They can use this app. They can't download apps themselves. They can only message or call particular people. You can do a lot of controls with that, and it's free. It's built into a phone. You just get your kid a phone, put them on your plan, and you can put it there. There is further monitoring that you can do, and there are tons and tons of companies that do this. That there's some that have good ones, and they have strengths and weaknesses. So one thing about Bark does a really good job. Bark they're the ones that they will send you a notification if your kid gets, if it's a text message with a text that seems like someone's being mean to your kid, you can get a notification, and it's really amazing. Problem is, particularly with Apple, Apple has made the highest priority and the highest value of our life to be privacy. And that doesn't stop with your kids. Apple believes more than you having control over your kid's device, they believe in your child having privacy on their device. And that causes problems with these third-party monitoring systems because Bark will, if your kid receives a nude image, you will get a notification for that nude image as soon as your kid is on your home network at home. If your kid is on cellular data, Apple doesn't want you interfering through cellular data with your kid's phone. And so basically how this works for anyone who's nerdy enough to care is when they get home, it uploads a backup of their device to your home network. And then it looks at that backup of their device and it pulls out this is something that you need to be warned about. So if your kid's sitting at home and they receive a nude image, you're immediately going to get notified. But if your kid is at school and they get something on their phone and they look at it and then delete it, and then they come home and it uploads the backup of their phone, you're never going to know that it was there. And it just completely misses it because it can't do real time, because Apple says we can't allow that invasion of privacy to happen. So don't think that if you put this monitoring system on your kid's phone that you're going to see everything, because there's ways around it and there's ways to keep from seeing it. Another thing with, it's not just Apple, Android has a safe mode that just kills these. Like if you get in safe mode on your Android, these don't know anything that's happening on your phone, except for Boomerang. Boomerang somehow has done it. I don't know how, but they figured it out. So you can't do Android safe mode with Boomerang. I don't know why, but no one else has figured it out. So there's ways to get around those filterings. Most of these also have a hard time, I mentioned earlier, they have a hard time filtering within apps. So I recommend, if your kid is using a social media app, I recommend using only apps that have a web option. So you can get on Facebook through Safari, and these will do a great job filtering on Safari, them using Facebook. They'll do great. But if you have a social media app that only comes in app form and you can't get on it on a browser, them using it in that app form is going to be difficult to filter. There's going to be problems getting to it. Some of these apps have parental control options now. More and more of these apps have parental control options. I would recommend you know what those parental control options are before you let them download that app. So like Instagram, they've got all kinds of parental control options that you can put on Instagram. Don't let your kid have Instagram until you look at kind of what are those controls that I'm able to have and what is that monitoring. And I'll show you some of that in a minute. Now, I will say, hold on, is this still with parental in-app? Nope, I'm skipping ahead of myself. Am I? Where am I? Here I am. Okay, so in-app parental controls, and there are other options that you can get a router at home for your Wi-Fi that has parental controls built into the router, so if they're on your Wi-Fi, it's going to be covered. I highly recommend device level filtering. So the routers and Wi-Fi and network and VPN and all that stuff, it can be helpful, but if they just go to their cellular data, then your fancy, expensive router is not doing anything to help you. So do the device level filtering. Where these are important is for school devices. Your child is going to school and probably getting handed a device that can do all sorts of stuff and getting sent home with it. If you put there's a thing called a Griffin router is really helpful that a lot of people are recommending. And then there's a Bark makes something, it's not a router, it's called Bark Home, I think. And it is kind of a network level filtering. They bring their school computer home, and it falls under your network filtering that is on your router. So that's important. you should also just, with the devices being sent home from schools, you should be aware of what they have on them and what they're able to access. So some school systems are doing a really good job of locking down those devices where they only have what they need to learn. Some school systems are not locking them down at all, and they can look at whatever they want to. I was watching a video this week about this stuff, and someone was saying that every computer, this school system was going to giving devices to kids, and whenever they first gave their devices out to kids, every computer had Minecraft on it. And they could get to it during class at school. And it would send them notifications. Do you want to play Minecraft? Yeah, I do want to play Minecraft right now. And so it was just silly. A lot of the school systems haven't figured out yet, okay, what do we need to put on these computers? And so you need to be aware of that. You can, if your school system is not willing to do what it takes to make those devices safe, you can submit a 504 to the school system and say, I don't want my kid to use this device. You're able to do that if your kid is being given a device that is unsafe for them. But if you don't want to go to that extreme, you can do Wi-Fi filtering, and as long as they're at home, that will help them with their device. Okay, I've got a lot more to say, but are there any questions? Yeah. And that's a good example of just like, you have to have conversations like that because your kid isn't thinking about everything that could go wrong with that. We hear, you shared your password, like, think of all the crazy stuff that can happen if you give someone your password, but your kid's not thinking through that. So that's a good example of we need to talk through those things. And there's little things like that pop up all the time. Okay, so boundary level 3 is limited access to some apps. This is very, very similar to the last one, but it is not, the parental monitoring part is not on it. So this is probably for a much older child, if not graduated and gone. But if they have some limited access to an app and you're not getting a notification if they're looking at something, or you're not able to see every little thing, this is a high level of trust, but it's still limited. So you need to, number one, know about the apps that your child is downloading. I would once again say, I don't think your child should have the ability to download an app without your explicit permission. There are ways on Apple Screen Time to make it to where they can, if they need to download an app, they send you a notification and you can say yes. It's smooth, it's easy, it's simple, it's not a massive inconvenience, and it's worth it for you to say, I'm going to make the decisions of what apps are on your phone from the start. If they request an app that you're like, I don't really know much about that app, then you can learn about that app, and maybe it's an app that's fine. But I do want to say there are very few safe apps. There are not many apps that cannot be turned into something extremely, extremely wicked. So even if you have Hoopla or Libby, these are like library apps that are for reading, right? Put that on your kids' phone so they can read books and educational, and we like that. Also, they have movies on those apps, some of which are pretty explicit and not good. Also, there's magazines on those apps that you can get to, and that's also not good. So just recognize, even some apps that you would just from the start be like, oh yeah, that's good, I'll let them have this library app, you need to know what's happening on that app. It's not in and of itself safe app. There's all sorts of ways for it to be used in sinful ways. Now I want to talk to you specifically about some apps that you should know about as you decide what apps should be on your child's device. Number one is vault apps. These look like something innocent while they hide messaging or pictures or other things. So I'm going to show you a couple of vault apps on my phone that I downloaded. I do not keep these on my phone, but for this, I downloaded them. If you look at this app here, it's called Calculator. And what's it look like? Looks like a calculator, right? Equals, multiplier, x, plus, right? Calculator, you click on it, open it up. What's that look like? That looks like a calculator. What if I do 1 plus 2 equals? It does calculator things, right? Well, also, though, you can program it to have a PIN number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and look at that. There's photos and videos and audio, and you can store all of your photos for ways that your parents can't get to them. And you would have no idea because it's a calculator. So something that you should, just a good principle, if you are monitoring what your kids, also there are ads that pop up on it that we don't need to look at. So a few things that you should recognize is, you know how you can do a calculator on your phone? There's a calculator built in on your phone, and it's a pretty extensive calculator. You don't need a calculator app. So if your kid is requesting, hey, I want to download this calculator app, you should be like, you have a calculator. There's no need for you to do a calculator app. This one's the same thing. It's called Converter, $. It's a unit conversion thing, and it works just the same way. It's got right here, you can convert $1 is 0.92 euros right now and use it as a converter. Or you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, and it gets to your photos, and you can store photos in it. So it's the same sort of thing. Just be aware, like, if you haven't seen this app before, or if it looks like a super innocent app, it might be something else. There's all sorts of these, and the depraved thing about it is that if you go onto the App Store and you search Vault apps, it's just like there's tons and tons of these Vault apps, and the way that they are advertised on the App Store is you can hide your photos from people, and you can use this for nefarious purposes. Like, they aren't hiding the fact that these are sinful apps, and they are advertising them in that way. So you need to be aware of Vault apps. You need to be aware of yes. So it's the data is moved, right, and it's copied. So I now have that photo in my photos. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you can set it, so as I was moving those photos over, it popped up, as soon as I moved them over, it said, do you want to delete this from your device? So it's it's trying to not have it in your gallery and to have it in that instead. VPN apps put the phone basically on a network with no parental controls or school controls. So if you have network level, if you have one of those routers at home, there are apps that if you go on their phone and you search VPN and they've got a VPN app, usually that app will pop up. But basically what it does is it circumvents any parental controls that are on that network, including your school controls. So most schools have some sort of filtering on their Wi-Fi, and if they have a VPN app on their phone, they can circumvent a lot of that. VPNs can actually be used for your benefit in protecting your kids and to keep kids from looking at things, but you have to be kind of tech savvy to figure that out. There are videos online that you can figure that help you with that, yes. If they have the VPN app. So they might be able to, and it depends, again, like if they have the computer locked down to where your kid can't download outside apps, then you don't have to worry about this because they can't get the VPN app on there. But if they're not protected from downloading apps, and your kid can download Instagram or whatever it is, then they can download a VPN app at a time when no one's looking or anything. So it just depends on I'm not sure different schools' setups on that. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be a TFCA. So again, if you just go into search on that phone and type in VPN, if they have a VPN app, it should let you know. Live streaming apps. So there's tons of these right now. But you need to be aware, just as you're thinking about what your child is able to look at on a phone, live streaming can do anything, right? Anything could happen on a live stream. People can say anything, people can do anything, unexpected things can happen. So any app that has live streaming, I'm not saying don't let them do it, but you need to weigh the risk of that as well. Is it okay for my child to watch someone who has a completely free autonomy to do whatever they want before my kid can look away while live streaming? And this goes to one of the most bizarre things that I don't identify with, that I think is fine, and some of you may do this, I don't know, but Twitch is bizarre to me. It's live streaming gaming, so you basically just watch other people play video games on Twitch, and you can hear them talk, and there's this whole like community of gaming that is not like I'm going to play this game, but I'm going to watch other people play this game live, which again, to me, I'm like, I have zero desire to do that, but it's huge right now with our young people, and they will just watch other people play Minecraft for hours. But also just recognize that might sound like innocent thing that you don't really understand. They're watching some other kid play Minecraft, but also it's live streaming. So you have no idea what's going to come across that screen or what's going to be said in that. So you just need to be aware of that. That's, again, not to say no live streaming apps. There would be very few live streaming apps or very few apps you could use if you cut out live streaming entirely. But just be aware of what happens with live streaming. There's anonymous apps where you can get on and you can post comments, or you can message without assigning your name to it, which is unbelievably dangerous, because you see how like nasty people can get on social media even when their name is attached to it. If you just let them be anonymous and have no consequences for what they're going to say, your child no person at any age really needs to put themselves under that. That is an incredibly dangerous thing. And connected to that is a meeting strangers apps. Any app where your child is allowed to just make a connection with some stranger that you don't know, you need to be very aware of that, and I would argue not allow that to happen. There's different settings. So like if you go on Instagram, you could be friends with a stranger on Instagram, but you can also put some parental controls on there that would allow you to control a little more who they're connecting with on that. Some questions you can ask about social media in particular. Social media can be a great thing, can be a really dangerous thing. So just questions to ask before you say, yes, I'm going to let my kid use this social media platform. Number one, again, are they able to interact with strangers? If they can get to strangers, I think it's probably not worth it for younger students, and especially not children. Some older students may be able to deal with that, but that's something you need to think carefully about. Are they able to hide what has been sent or received? Y'all, I think that Snapchat is crazy. I think the idea that there is an app where you send a photo that someone looks at and then it vanishes and no one ever knows that you sent it. That is terrifying to me, and it's crazy. And it gives even the illusion of safety to your kids that I can send this and it's going to get deleted and no one's ever going to see it. While, number one, Snapchat's got it for an eternity and they're going to use it for something one day. And number two, there's always a screenshot and there's always an opportunity for that picture to last longer. But for you as a parent, that is, my kid can send a message or receive a message and I am never going to be able to have a conversation with them about it because I am never going to know that it was there. That's lunacy to me. That is crazy. Snapchat, I don't like Snapchat. I think Snapchat's crazy is the word I've used. Okay. But are they able to hide what has been sent? Is there private messaging that's happening? Um, a lot of these social media apps are allowing now, they're putting parental controls in to where you do have access to the messaging that your child is doing, which is great. Do be aware of the opportunity to delete things, though. There, you could have someone messaging your child and they are able to delete it before you get to it. So be aware of that. But some apps, there's private messaging where you're not going to be able to get to the messages that your kid is using unless you take their phone and you sign on yourself and do it. And that's a dangerous thing you need to be aware of. This is a new one that is weird, but what artificial intelligence options are available on this app? Many apps now are opening up chat bots that are artificial intelligence robots that can chat with you and can have conversations with you. And this is on Snapchat. Meta is about to release them. They're in testing stages, and you can do a limited release. Meta is the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and they are making these AI bots. So the Meta one, I watched something on the Meta chat bots this week, which was fascinating. They are making these faces of like famous people and saying, this is your chat bot, and you can talk to Tom Brady. They make the name something else, but it's some famous person that you're talking to. And this one guy did a test with it. There was a mom. It's a mom who, her thing was, you can tell me anything. You can talk to me about whatever. And this was an affirming mom who wanted to say nothing but positive things to you. And this guy had a conversation with her, and some crazy things. He said that at one point, she told him that she was not an AI bot. She said, no, I'm a real person. You're talking to a real person right now. And he's like, no, you are owned by Meta. You're an artificial intelligence. And she was like, no. And she was trying to convince him she was not artificial intelligence. And then she went on and was trying to compare herself to his actual mom, and was like saying, oh, your mom did that? I would never do that as a loving and caring mom. Like, that's on Instagram. That's just an artificial intelligence chat that your kid can have with someone who's going to say that I'm a better mom than you are as a robot. You should be aware of what the artificial intelligence options are on there. What level of inappropriate content is available, and what app-specific parental controls are available. There's most of these social media apps, the age restriction is around 13 years old. Don't break that. Don't circumvent the safety measure that the apps themselves are putting up. If your kid wants Instagram and the cutoff is 13 years old and they're 12 years old, make them wait. Like, don't try and jump the gun on these social media apps. The one major reason for that I mentioned last week, but I wanted to come back to it, was mental health and social media. Jonathan Haidt has done a ton of study on the mental health of the next generation. And he did this article that says social media is a major cause of the mental illness epidemic in teen girls. Here's the evidence. So a lot of people say, yeah, there's mental health going up and there's social media use going up, but we don't really know if the correlation equals causation and stuff. And he goes through in this article is like, no, it's causation. It's clear. This is happening. One graph that he showed is this was a study in the UK of teens who were depressed, and it puts them up against how many hours, it's cut off so you can't see, but how many hours are they using social media, and the percentage of them that are depressed. And it's just like, the more you use social media, especially with girls, it is a straight up curve that is making this worse for them. So don't put your kid, before the social media people would say, use my app, don't put your kid on that app. Don't jump the gun on that. And again, he shows in that article, 57% of teen girls are experiencing sadness or hopelessness, and 30% of teen girls have seriously committed suicide. Oh, not that. 30% have seriously considered suicide, which is just terrifying. And so we really need to take social media serious. Now, I've got a few minutes. I want to show you a couple things on social media that you should just be aware of. I'm going to use Instagram. I have Instagram and I use it. Also, just if you're unaware, Threads is Instagram's response to Twitter, X, whatever it is. It's like the text-based version of Instagram, and these are integrating apps. So you'll see Threads stuff happen on Instagram, and Instagram stuff happen on Threads. So just be aware of those. But on Instagram, this is my Instagram. I like football, so there's Instagram. You'll notice that, there's a Threads thing. So that already, I'm on Threads. If your kid has Instagram, they have Threads. And they can't click on this and see the rest of it, but they can see a little bit of Threads. That's popping up. Now, what you need to know particularly about Instagram is these are generally people that I follow, people that I'm interested in. I like SportsCenter, so I follow SportsCenter, and that's what I'm going to see. Where it gets risky with social media is when you go to the Explore tab, which is where it starts sending suggestions to anyone who's using it. And it's hard to monitor an Explore tab because an Explore tab can really send whatever suggestions it wants at any time. Now, I will say, I'm going to show you my Explore tab, and I think that it's all going to be good. Sometimes the Explore tab shoots you something that you don't know. What you should be aware of, though, is if your child's Explore tab is covered with stuff that they shouldn't be looking at, there's a reason for that. It's because it's seen what they're looking at, and it's sending them more. So I'm going to go to my Explore tab, and there are guitar pedals, there's football, guitar pedals, guitar pedals, guitar pedals, guitar pedals, football, football, football. Like, you know what I do with my spare time. I look at guitar pedals, and I look at football. Now, sometimes it'll send me something that I'm like, I don't know where that came from, and that's whatever. But if this is covered with inappropriate pictures, the reason for that is the things that they are looking at is inappropriate pictures. And so if your kid has Instagram, you can go on their Instagram and go to that Explore tab, and you're going to have a pretty good idea what they're spending their time on in Instagram. Now, if your kid, again, if they have Instagram, you can go, and it has a supervision option that I haven't played with a whole lot, but it is a pretty good parental control that you can kind of adjust who they're following and who they're seeing, and you can see their messages and that sort of thing. But again, they highly value privacy, and so kids can kind of opt in and out of this stuff, and they can kind of get out of it. You'll know that they got out of it, but they can kind of step in and out of it as much as they want to. But that's not just an Instagram thing. That Explore tab in particular, that's how all of these social media things work. Last time we did this class on a Wednesday night, I just was like, what in the world? I'm going to try a couple social media apps that I've never tried before. And I thought I'll be more knowledgeable so that I can share some things with parents. And it was awful. I downloaded TikTok, and I spent, no joke, 3 minutes on TikTok and deleted it from my phone because I pulled it up, I gave it my name, and I pulled it up and I went to the home page, and there was a video there that it suggested. I swiped once, and it was a scantily clad woman, just like that. I gave it my name, and boom, one swipe, and I'm already looking at inappropriate things. That was TikTok. And so I was like, all right, that's all I need to know about TikTok. I did the same thing with Snapchat. Same thing happened. It was just like that. These things are so readily available to your kids on these apps. You have to look at parental controls. You have to find a way to monitor this stuff. Now, again, this is not something that you just forever are going to remove this, because they turn 18, they leave your house, and they're going to download Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, and they're going to do whatever. You need to have those conversations with them and give them some opportunity at some point to be able to practice and learn discernment to where they are able to say, no, I'm not going to look at that. And they're able to reshape their Explore tab into something that is actually wholesome and has a lot of guitar pedals on it, because that's what they should do with it. But that is something that you don't need to introduce to them too early before they have the impulse control that they need. And that's something that you should not do without monitoring and without being able to step in and say, hey, this is something that you shouldn't be looking at. Now, really quickly, I'm going to talk about boundary level 4. I don't think any of you as parents need to get to this point. No limits with accountability. This is a boundary level that you could say, like, I don't have any controls of them, but you can use some software like Covenant Eyes or X3 Watch or Accountable to You, where you get an email on a weekly basis that has information about what they've looked at. Like, if they've gone to an inappropriate website, you'll get an email that says, hey, they went to this inappropriate website. That's after the fact. That's something that you can't do to stop it. This is something that I would argue just about all of us should do. We should all have accountability, even as adults, on the technology that we're using. Now, that might look like an accountability software. That might look like just the ways that you use your devices in your home. I'll tell you guys, Abby has every password, and there's really only one password, and it's every password. But like, she has open access to any device that I use at any time. She can take my stuff and look at any app, and I have no boundary there at all. And it's a great accountability, because I know that if I start looking on Instagram at things I shouldn't be looking at, my Explore tab's readily available to my wife, and at any time she can go on there and be like, let's see what Will's been looking at on Instagram. And I know that. That's really good accountability. I would argue that all of you should have some kind of policy to where you are an open book, particularly to your spouse, and you're able to do that. Sometimes we should use kind of higher level of accountability, like these softwares that are going to send your accountability partner a message on a regular basis, and you're going to be having those conversations whether you like it or not. I don't think that kids or students get to this point while they are under your care. I think that this is they go to college, and then you need to be having accountability while they don't have limits. And then they should probably be self-imposing some limits at that point. All right, I'm almost out of time. I'm going to super fast. A few tricks they use. They can change the time zone on their device, and that will mess up your time limits, your screen time. Can't use it after 10 o'clock? Ha, loser, Central Time. And then you can just keep on using your phone. That's a problem. VPN, I talked about that a little bit. The share to function can get to a messaging app. If you say, I don't want to use messaging, if you take a picture, let's take a picture of the floor, and I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to share this picture, and I'm going to send it to someone. Well, I don't want to open a message because I don't know what's in my messages. But if you go to that message, you can just then delete the picture, and you're in the messaging app, and you're just having a conversation. So you might have put restrictions on their messaging app, but they find a roundabout way to get to that messaging app, if that makes sense. Close that. Links to websites are something you need to know about. In a Notes app or in a message or on Instagram, you can get to a link that is going to circumvent your filtering stuff. So I think I've got Notes on here somewhere. That's Parent Technology, yes. So I have put a link to a YouTube video. It is about a guitar pedal. And I can just hold it down, and it's going to pop up YouTube. This is not Safari. I have not opened this link yet, but I'm watching this YouTube video. So even if you say you can't get to Safari, you can't get to YouTube, I'm watching a video anyway. because it's just a preview in the tab. You can do that in notes. You can do that in messages. Instagram, I've talked here. Instagram link in bios are a thing. So I've got a link in my bio. If I go to this link, it's opening this link in Instagram. This is a browser. It's not Safari. So whatever restrictions you have on Safari are not touching this browser. So if they go to someone's link in bio on Instagram, they're getting to a browser without using whatever browser you think that they're using. They will figure out your password. I already said that once. So just don't think that you can keep that from them. I'm not going to talk about that. That's too nerdy. Airplane mode, believe it or not, is a trick that you can use. You can turn airplane mode on and sometimes get into an app that because it's not connecting to whatever restrictions, and you get into the app and then you turn airplane mode off and it doesn't realize you're in the app, and so you can use it. It's just little hacks like that. They will find them. They are really smart and find little things like that. I talked about if they delete an app and then re-download that app, then it just resets the app limit. So if you say you can use this for an hour, use it for an hour, delete it, start over, you got another hour for free. Safe mode on Androids keeps you out of your monitoring except for Boomerang. And then if your kid is really desperate, they can factory reset their phone, and they have a brand new phone with no restrictions. It's a really easy thing to do. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that really quickly because you're like, why did that phone get factory reset? But if you're not paying attention, they could have a completely unrestricted phone with their own Apple ID that they've created for themselves and be doing whatever on their factory reset phone. So those are some tricks. I am out of time. I don't think I had much else to say. But any questions while we have everyone? Yes, sir. Yeah, YouTube, it's the Wild West. I mean, you can't, if you let them have YouTube, you let them have all of YouTube. There is just no.
It's just a constant blocking, unblocking.
Right.
I let them have access to it. But if
And
not,
they have some, like YouTube has some settings in it that are like content sensitivity things that you can raise, but it doesn't. You can really see a lot of stuff.
we don't let them download the app. It's just accessing into the browser.
Right.
But that's been the biggest challenge.
And I would say that's hugely important with YouTube. If you download the app and allow access to that, you can actually go through messages, and there's a little sub app in your messages that you can go and watch YouTube on messages, and it doesn't have browser history, and it's just like a unfiltered YouTube app. So yes, I wish there was a better answer for YouTube. That does remind me, if your kid is on social media, you need to be on whatever social media they're on. If they have an Instagram, you need to be on Instagram following them, even if you don't want Instagram. Like, do not put them on a social media app that you are not on and actively observing them on. All right, I'm going to let you guys go, but if you do have any other questions, feel free to ask them after. Let me pray for us, and then we'll go. Lord, thank you so much again for the great responsibility we have of discipling our kids. Lord, send us out with wisdom and help us to think clearly about the responsibility you've given us, and help our children to grow up to love you more than they love technology and more than they love all the things that they could get to on it. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.